When things get tough, a little understanding can go a long way. And our next guest has written a book of poetry that she says and hopes will help families, teachers, employers bridge that communication gap, especially dealing with mental health issues. We'd like to welcome Gail Carter-Cade to First Coast Living. Welcome, and we're going to get into your book, but first tell us about your background as an educator.
Well, as an educator, I've worked at Duval County Schools as a substitute teacher, and I specifically worked in special needs. I love them the most, and I would grow and learn more about them and how they operate and the things that they go through. So I kept this inside of me. I said, well, if anything that I've seen similar to that in my children, I would go after it. So then I had children, and then one of my daughters, there was something different. And I had a meeting with the counselors, and they were telling me that Gayla, she requires a little different education style. So once you're told something about your child, you don't hear anything else. It's like a mental block.
Right.
So that's what I remember. And so if I feel that if a book like what I've created of poetry, where the teacher or the counselor could have showed me a poem that addressed what the needs they wanted us to face, it would have been easier and more understandable and more relatable for me to be, as a parent, to be proactive more. But still, I didn't let that stop me. I wanted to learn more about how my daughter worked and how to best help her. So I used to volunteer, and then I would go over the information that she was given from school. I would go to different meetings to find out as much as I could. I would read because I wanted to understand my child and help her and children like her. And so that's what I did. And that's it.
So the poems, I feel like, is it safe to say that we all have that poem in us that we need to get out to help others, so to help us connect?
Yes, we do. I feel that it's all a part of imperfection. And some of us have a little bit more or a different style of imperfection, and we just need to learn more about it so that we can help one another and communicate with one another, especially with parents and children, teachers and children's, employers and employees, and psychiatrists or psychologists and their patient. Because sometimes we have things inside of us, but we're not sure how to explain it.
Right.
And if there is nothing to induce to bring it out, then we just keep it inside. And then it will show, it was, as I said, manifestations in different areas, it will show, but you might not know what you're looking at. That's why I have a phrase that I use, look at what you see and listen to what you hear. Because those things, if you did those things closely enough, starting as a child, they will show you a lot about themselves. People try to say, oh, they grow out of it. Some things they don't, and some things they do. So therefore, we need to look at them deeply and find out if there's a little bit something different about our child, because if we don't address it when they're young, it stays with them till when they're older. That's why you'll see different things, situations happen when they become professional athletes or doctors or lawyers or teachers. Those things still manifest themselves, but we may have a way of hiding it. But with my book, we can go into finding a poem that may address what you need or give you the leverage to say, well, if I can't speak about it, but if I have a poem or a book to show you, then you can get a better idea of what I'm going through and what I need help with.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and as a dad of 3 daughters, you know, you try to give them some life examples, and you want to, sometimes we need to talk. And boy, poetry would be a good way to do that. And what are some of the subjects of the poems in your book?
Okay. One of the poems that I specifically, I don't remember a whole lot of my poetry. I just, when it comes, it just flows and I write it. But one in particular, I had taken my daughter to daycare, and she was about 2 years old. And then when I went inside to drop her off, the nurses, I mean, the attendants would say she wouldn't talk. She'd just sit there like a good girl in the corner. She doesn't play with anybody. She just sit there, or sat there. So one day after I had dropped off, I went back to my car and I started crying. I was upset because 2-year-olds don't sit still. 2-year-olds, they're curious, they play and those sort of things, but she didn't. So then when I was sitting in the car, a poem came to me, and it's called When Is My Mommy Coming Back? And it lets us know that, and the people who take care of children, that sometimes these children need deeper help, or to look at them a little more closely, because that could be an anxiety or social anxiety that can develop as young as 2. And if we're not careful, it can just keep going with them, and then you'll see them, it may start shutting them down or make them more standoffish. So that's why I made that poem. And it's good when, see, attendants, they have a lot of children to take care of. Not to say they're neglecting anybody, but if you have a child who's sitting quiet and just sitting there, you let the peace be, because I got to get all these other kids. So therefore, it's just a wake-up call for all of us, because sometimes if we have a child at home and we have other children, and if that one is quiet, okay, so therefore, it's just something to look at. And
I can see how this helps all of us.
Right.
All of us grow and learn and overcome those obstacles. I feel like we put all these obstacles up in front of us in life, and half of them we don't even know why they're there. So that's where uplifting comes in.
Right. And like I said, I have broken up into the different areas of manifestation in your life: school, work, and just all over. So therefore, it will be easier for anyone to use.
Very good. And speaking of that, where can we find your book?
On Amazon and Barnes & Noble thus far. Yep.
Okay, well, thank you so much. So refreshing, and I learned so much from you just talking with you, and I'm sure we're going to learn even more through the poems in your book.
Yes.
And of course, you can find more on the book and where to find it on our website, and that's firstcoastliving.net.